Mitch Sherman, theathletic.com, covers Nebraska. We know the story. Scott Frost is gone. Mitch Sherman joins us on 365 Sports. Of everything I read that you wrote this weekend, there was one part, a couple of maybe a sentence or two, about the lack of discipline as a head coach and, late game decisions or lack of this and that. How could someone who played under Tom Osborne, who probably controlled everything from top to bottom in that program, have no discipline?
Well, he wasn't Tom Osborne, or he's not Tom Osborne, Scott Frost. I think that's probably a good place to start. And yeah, I think Scott Frost came up in coaching in a system primarily in Oregon, though he did have some other stops before that, where there wasn't as much of a focus on details, because the way that Oregon did things in those years, and you could still say now when the athletes are there, the details didn't matter because the athletes were there. And that largely is what allowed Scott Frost to win and go 13-0, which is, a great accomplishment at UCF. But, if the special teams messed up or if he committed a turnover, you're probably just going to break off an 80-yard run or something like that as soon as you got the ball back. So when you get to Nebraska, when Frost got to Nebraska in 2018 and moved into the Big Ten West, and that style of play presented such a contrast to the things that he encountered early in his career, it's somewhat understandable that he wasn't prepared for the detail, the need for great attention to detail. Look, it was just kind of a cascade of unfortunate events that led to the end for Scott Frost. And I think if something had gone differently earlier, maybe it's a different kind of domino effect. This decision gets made different, which leads to this result that's different, and then that's different, and then another thing's different, and they're sitting in a completely different spot. I'm not suggesting that he would have won the Big Ten or even gone 10-2 in a regular season, but 16-31 is about as bad as it possibly could have been over the last 4+ years. And if he was even mediocre, he would still be coaching at Nebraska.
Mitch, how much of this decision was to get in the first spot in line in this season's upcoming coaching carousel, and how much of it was, even though they had to spend some extra money to buy him out before October 1st, how much of it was they just have to get something out of this team this year if they can?
I think more the first part. It's possible that this team could rebound under Mickey Joseph, the interim coach, another former Nebraska quarterback who came from LSU in the offseason as associate head coach and receivers coach. And now he'll take over the program starting on Saturday. Well, starting now, but starting on the field in a game on Saturday against Oklahoma. So that's some introduction as head coach. Interesting for Mickey in that when he played at Nebraska, Oklahoma was the chief rival, and Oklahoma ended his playing career as a starting quarterback in 1990 when he suffered a traumatic leg injury in Norman. He was recruited by Oklahoma. So there's a story that's set up that's pretty interesting for what could happen on the field Saturday. But the way Nebraska has played in 3 games this season, I wouldn't expect that story is going to be necessarily a good one for Mickey Joseph. But primarily, they needed to, yes, be first in line. They needed to move on. They needed to cut the cord here. It wasn't going to work. And credit to Trev Alberts for recognizing that once it was over, it was over. He wasn't going to let this thing drag out and be more painful than it already is for the players, for the coaches who were involved. So he knew it was done. And yeah, it cost Nebraska some extra money, but Trev's not paying it. His athletic department's not paying it. Clearly, Nebraska found somebody who was willing to step up and write that check to allow them to make this decision before his buyout was set to go down, set to be cut in half, and could potentially save the school upwards of $8 million on October 1st. But those 20 days that Nebraska saved allow Trev to get out in front of this thing, and it also allows Nebraska to send a message about the importance of this, and that if it needs to be said, it takes football very seriously, and that'll be a message that gets across on Saturday when Fox is here with its big noon kickoff show. Instead of focusing on a football program that is languishing in really a terrible place with a coach who's somewhat of a lame duck, they can present the image of a school that's moving forward, and there's probably some value in that.
Mitch, how would you describe the state of Nebraska fans right now? It's obviously, not a huge shock that this is taking place. They've been through the battles and the big losses, the bad losses over the last few years. They've been wanting to be back for a while now. So on the one hand, it probably feels good to be turning the page and know there's an exciting coaching hire coming up. But on the other hand, you just had to dismiss one of the all-time legends. Sort of what's the state of Nebraska fan right now?
Yeah, I think even the Nebraska fans who had determined that Scott Frost was not the answer, that he was not going to turn this thing around, looked at Saturday, the game, the loss against Georgia Southern, and then Sunday the announcement that Frost had been fired as a sad day. Not necessarily the same kind of way that they might have looked at it when, say, Bill Callahan or Mike Riley, previous coaches who didn't have ties to Nebraska before they came to be the coach, were let go. Those were probably more exciting moments, and I wouldn't say that's what Sunday brought. Most fans, I think, had come to understand, especially over these last couple of weeks as Nebraska started the season 1 and 2 and looked like it was going to have many of the same problems that had plagued this program for the last several years. They had come to realize that it was probably over. There was a pretty good faction and a pretty good percentage of people who supported Frost and wanted to support Frost even last year at the end of that season because of the close losses and the fact that he was going to make changes to his offensive staff and bring in a ton of transfers. But when it started out this season in Ireland against Northwestern and they lost in the same kind of fashion, and especially when Frost tried that onside kick. I mean, if your listeners aren't up to speed, Nebraska got an 11-point lead in the third quarter, and then inexplicably Frost called for an onside kick. It didn't work. Northwestern scored. The momentum changed, and Nebraska lost the game. So I think in that moment and after that game, people recognized that this was an inevitability.
Yeah, we had that as a topic following that weekend as well. Mitch, is it a destination location at all?
Oh, I wouldn't say so on a national level, but it doesn't need to be in order to rate as a program that can win on the level of what you see in other places in the Big Ten and other places in the Midwest. If you can win at Kansas State and Iowa State and Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, then you can win in Lincoln, Nebraska. You look at the facilities at the stadium, at the support for this program with 385 consecutive sellouts. They're opening a $165 million football facility this coming summer. So the new coach will be moving into one of the most impressive buildings in all of the sport. Certainly, there in some ways, yes, it is a destination location, but Nebraska is working on 5 consecutive losing seasons, and unless Mickey Joseph turns things around, it's going to be 6 consecutive losing seasons for a new coach to be walking into. That's not appealing. That doesn't make it a destination. But as Albert mentioned yesterday, there's good things and there's bad things about every college football program, and there are plenty of things to be excited about and to appreciate about Nebraska. Notably, that incredible fan support that has continued even through these difficult times.
Does Scott Frost keep them going too deep into their past? I know that certain coaches could have been assistants there, but do they not maybe try to rerun Tom Osborne again and do something new?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to hire another former player in this one. Not necessarily because there's a tendency to want to do the opposite. Want to hire a coach who's the opposite of the one who just failed, and Nebraska's been through that cycle over and over now for the last 15 or 20 years, going back to Frank Solich and the hire of Bill Callahan, and then on to Bo Pelini and Mike Riley, and then Frost. It's been one opposite kind of hire after the other. And I don't think Trev Alberts necessarily is setting out to hire somebody who's the opposite of Scott Frost, which is probably a good thing because that's a cycle that hasn't really worked. But, there's not an ex-Husker who's knocking on the door with the credentials, who's ready to come take over this program. I don't think Zach Taylor from the Cincinnati Bengals, after his Super Bowl appearance last year, wants to run things in Lincoln. If he does, then the door's open. Yeah. But no, that's not a name that's coming up. But it'll be somebody from the outside. It's likely going to be somebody who's been a college head coach at the Power 5 level. perhaps somebody who's in one of those positions now. And there's plenty of good candidates who I think would like the opportunity to coach in the Big Ten at a place like Nebraska with the resources that it has.
Mitch, even with all of the changes going on, how much nostalgia and excitement do you expect there still to be on the Husker side of things, even though the matchup's not the best, but just playing Oklahoma again, just how much do you think that still matters?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be more doom and gloom, I think, if this hadn't happened on Sunday. Even though it was sad, it's going to temporarily inject some life into the players and I think into the fans. People are happy for Mickey Joseph that he gets the opportunity to come do this. And I mentioned the ties that he has to the Nebraska-Oklahoma rivalry, so that makes it special for him. And look, Oklahoma's not Alabama. This was a team that Nebraska played close a year ago in Norman. It was 23-16. I know Dylan Gabriel has started well for the Sooners, but it's not unfathomable to think that Nebraska, with the talent that it has on the offensive side, can get into a game with the Sooners. I don't expect Nebraska to win. There's all kinds of confidence issues with this team, and they just haven't shown the ability to know how to win games. Certainly not to know how to win close games, and you can't expect Nebraska to do anything in victory other than to win a close game against the Sooners, meaning it's not going to be a 2 or 3 touchdown victory. So they have to learn those things slowly. And at some point, it's going to have to happen for the first time, whether it's with Mickey Joseph in charge this weekend or 4 weeks from now or next year with the first-year coach. At some point, it's got to start. They've got to turn things around. And they will. It's a matter of when. It can't go on like this forever. So, why not this weekend? I think that's the approach that you have to take if you're Nebraska going into this game, and you hope that you've got some energy and some excitement because of there being bright hopes for the future, and that you can take that out there on the field and catch Oklahoma in the first road game under its first-year coach.
Mitch, thanks for your time. Scott Frost will be a head coach somewhere else. I don't know where it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be like anything that goes upwards, although you can go upwards because Nebraska's not been very good. But you wonder if what he did at